guys, it's Danny, and today we are going to be talking about the beautiful world of intrusive thoughts. What are intrusive thoughts? Unwanted thoughts that involuntarily arise. They are disturbing or unpleasant in nature and typically result in feelings of guilt, shame, and disgust. So these intrusive thoughts can take any form. They are often sexual or violent. A lot of times it will be imagining yourself doing or saying something that's socially unacceptable as well, or something really embarrassing. And even though everybody experiences these intrusive thoughts, what really makes the intrusive thought so intrusive isn't the thought itself, but the reaction we have to that thought. For example, if you're driving your car and you have a thought of just swerving into the other lane and hitting an oncoming car, a lot of people, when they have these intrusive thoughts, they'll be like, oh, that was weird. I don't want to crash the car. And then they let it go. But when you get so caught in the emotion of like, oh my God, I can't believe I just had that thought. Like, why did I do that? When you get so caught up in what this thought means, you're getting sucked into the bullshit. So everybody does experience intrusive thoughts. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But having those strong reactions to those thoughts, it's not going to manifest into your reality what the intrusive thought is telling you is going to manifest. Instead, your reaction and fear feeds the thought, and therefore it triggers you to have more intrusive thoughts in the future. I hope that clarifies some ish and takes away some of the anxiety and the fear. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's happening. So, why do intrusive thoughts happen? In a lot of instances, our intrusive thoughts are a form of self-sabotage, and usually you can tell more directly when it's a form of self-sabotage when you kind of see your brain leading you to this conclusion, and even when you're kind of like, I don't really want to come to that conclusion, your brain still does anyway. So, for example, you're driving and you're looking at the car coming and you're kind of like, oh, that car's coming at me really fast. You almost start to feel that feeling of, I don't know, this is what I experienced. And then you're like, oh, no, I don't want to think about that. And your brain's like, what if you just swerved and crashed? And you're like, oh my God, what if I did that? I don't want to do that. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's so weird making this video because I'm like, are people going to think I'm crazy? I'm not. I promise. What the fuck? And in a way, that's a form of self-sabotage. Your brain almost wants to find a reason to make you feel guilt or to make you feel shame. And the reason self-sabotage comes up is because you have certain limiting beliefs, like, I can't do things right, I'm not good enough. Intrusive thoughts also come up because of repressed shame. So when we feel some sort of shame about ourselves and who we are, the intrusive thoughts are almost our brain's manifestation in order to evoke those feelings within us that we resonate with at a deeper level. So looking at this as an opportunity to look at that shame, confront that shame, send some love to the part of yourself that feels ashamed can be really important to understanding these intrusive thoughts. And if you believe in dark entities or spirits or things outside of what you perceive with your five senses, in a lot of scenarios, not every scenario, these intrusive thoughts will be a dark entity that is attached to you and is putting these thoughts into your head. In other dimensions, they communicate telepathically because even our thoughts have vibrations in of themselves. So that's how you communicate with your spirit guides, that's how you communicate with your, with dark entities a lot of the time. Even if it's not a dark entity, and even if it is your thoughts, the thoughts are not you. They're not an indicator of what you want. They're not an indicator of what you're going to manifest into your reality. They are just thoughts. So now that we know what intrusive thoughts are and why they happen, what do we do? How do we respond to our intrusive thoughts? Ow. The end. Just kidding. So, just going to our most recent example. If you believe the intrusive thoughts are a result of a dark entity or a spirit or a malevolent energy in your space, know that you can clear it purely with your intention. If you want to use sage or incense or crystals or any of the physical tools you have to assist you in this process, that is awesome, but it isn't needed. And if the intrusive thoughts continue even after this energy is gone, it's an indicator that it's deeper than just an entity, but the entity can certainly be adding on to the problem. Entities have more power over you when you're at a low vibration. So if you are very depressed and apathetic and you have a lot of traumas that you haven't dealt with, what entities can do is they can see you energetically. They'll be able to kind of see the cracks in your aura as I describe it, because I see things visually, and they can kind of like dig in through these cracks and trigger your trauma and trigger your fears. They're kind of almost like poking at the parts of you that are vulnerable, and so they evoke this amount of fear in you that keeps you at a lower vibration, and these dark entities will feed off of this fear. So knowing that just raising your vibration in general, first of all, is going to give them less power over you. Doing your shadow work, check out that other video, and working through your traumas will help protect you because of the fact that your fear will not be so easily triggered and so easily kind of held over you because you know how to face it more directly. And this is why when you're rejecting your shadow and when you're running away from your problems, these dark energies have more power over you and have a greater ability to influence you because they can put this fear in your face and you're just going to kind of be at the will of that because you haven't been able to face it head on and directly. So you can light a white candle, you can burn some incense or whatever you want to use to cleanse the energy, and you kind of set an intention to banish the spirit. And that would be any beings that are not in my highest good, are not welcome in my space, in my home, and in my aura. You're not welcome in my fucking house, bitch. So just know also, with clearing the entity, all it's going to do is be able to lower the frequency of the intrusive thoughts you have, and it also is not going to change the way that you react to those intrusive thoughts. Also, this is something that Elizabeth April said that I actually really resonated with, and when I first went through my spiritual awakening, I experienced this and I didn't quite understand why. When we are at a third dimensional frequency and we're kind of existing in this 3D matrix reality, when we start to see beyond the surface and as we're ascending to 5D, you have to kind of go through the stage of the fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension is seeing beyond the surface, but still being caught in that polarity. So this is kind of the realm of thinking that involves conspiracy theories. You're seeing past the surface, but you're still kind of focused on good guys versus bad guys, caught in the polarity of things rather than being above the polarity and loving and accepting all of it, right? So when you're going through the fourth dimensional frequency, you're going to be picking up on thoughts and ideas that exist in that fourth dimension. So if you're experiencing random intrusive thoughts as you are raising your vibration, that is why. Those thoughts won't necessarily have the same trigger in you unless it coincides with something that's already a trigger for you. It's important to realize that the intrusive thought is the bait, and your reaction to it is kind of like you indulging in either that limiting belief or the fear response that the dark entity is feeding off of. Now that we've cleared the spiritual entity stuff out of the way, I think it's important to get into the psychological nitty-gritty stuff. When you do have the intrusive thoughts, what do? First of all, it's important to realize that thought suppression doesn't work. 95% of our thoughts come from our subconscious, which means only 5% of our thoughts are consciously created, right? So these intrusive thoughts are coming from the depths of your subconscious to trigger you. When you realize that it is not the thought itself that keeps you in the state of fear and shame, and it is actually the reaction to the thought that has such a profound impact on you, it kind of shows you that thought suppression isn't going to do anything because you can't control it. You can't control that these thoughts are popping up into your brain. So instead of trying to suppress the thought, we have to change how we react to it. We want to let the thoughts come and go and no longer judge ourselves for what the thought is. Recently, when I've been having the old intrusive thoughts that used to really get with me, that were more violent, even though I'm not a violent person at all, those thoughts no longer have the same emotional reaction over me because I do not judge myself for them. I understand that those thoughts don't mean anything about me, and I know that I do not want to engage in those behaviors. So when I have those thoughts, I do not judge myself. I think, oh, that was weird. Let it go. But if you are so used to having this strong emotional reaction to those thoughts, it's not necessarily going to be like that instantly. Recently, I've been having intrusive thoughts about myself in the past. Me in past experiences. So, for example, if I think of a person years ago who I flirted with, I will think back to something I said and I'll be like, oh, what the fuck? And even though from a logical standpoint, I understand, all right, I love myself. I was making the best decision for myself that I knew how at that point. You know, that was a learning experience. That was an important lesson for me. The immediate emotional reaction when those thoughts come into my head is this feeling of shame, this feeling of guilt, this feeling of icky. So when you observe your reaction to the intrusive thoughts, you can actually see what limiting belief is being triggered. And when you see this limiting belief, you kind of start to understand what within yourself you need to reprogram. By the way, you're not going to squash this limiting belief all at once, but you will be able to like heal layers of it. Self-forgiveness helps a lot. And in that self-forgiveness, a lot of the times, it's allowing yourself to be angry at the other people in the situation. And even though I am not necessarily blaming the other person for anything, emotionally within me, it hurt. There's still a part of me emotionally that feels cheated or angry at that other person. Two things can be true at once. You can be angry and at the same time hold love for yourself and that other person. When you accept these deeper layers, then you start to soften the reaction you have to these intrusive thoughts. So remember, intrusive thoughts are not an indication of your moral character, and they're not psychic predictions. Usually psychic predictions, yes, they can put you into a state of fear, but that is usually not the intention. If this intrusive thought comes up frequently and it makes you really scared, it's probably not a psychic prediction. And let's just say it is. Coming into a place of acceptance, and I know that's a lot easier said than done. But for example, let's say you have a thought of your sibling dying. Instead of getting so wrapped up in, oh my God, what if it's real? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Instead, kind of coming to this place of acceptance of, okay, it's fucked up, but what if this did happen? As awful as it would be, as painful as it would be, I would be okay. I'll still be here. Honestly, I can communicate with her in the afterlife because you can. If you don't believe that in that stuff, that's totally fine. When you come into this place of acceptance of if that awful scenario was true, when that thought comes to you, it loses its power. Even then, you can actually use it as a positive thing of now whenever you're with your sister, you really appreciate the time you have together. Now you're more present in the moments you have with her because you kind of become aware all of a sudden that everything in life is temporary and you never know how long it's going to last. And you take this as an opportunity to enjoy your time with this person instead of putting yourself into a state of fear, which in actuality, all that's going to do is actually make you enjoy your time with that person less because you're just fearful all the time, right? And you're actually more caught in your head than present with that other person. And I almost guarantee you, when you take the power away from that thought will occur a lot less often. It's also important to understand that with manifesting, as I said before, having the thought itself isn't going to manifest that bad thing to happen. All it's going to do is manifest more intrusive thoughts by getting caught up in that thought and keeping you at a lower vibration. Where your attention goes, energy grows. So the more time you spend trying to figure out why you had this intrusive thought, trying to figure out what it means about you, all you are doing is actually manifesting more intrusive thoughts. And you're keeping yourself at a vibration where these intrusive thoughts occur. So in reality, it's a lot less important to analyze the intrusive thought itself because it is just the thought. And it is actually more important to be self-aware of what your response to the intrusive thought is. What thoughts do you have in response to that initial thought? What does it indicate about your limiting beliefs? Where does that kind of trauma, fear, intense emotion come from? So really, intrusive thoughts, even though they're painful and challenging and they are a blessing in disguise because they actually can put a direct mirror up to you to show you what are you not dealing with? What shame still exists inside of you? And maybe it's from this lifetime, maybe it's from a past lifetime. You don't even need to know exactly what it is, but what you do need to know is the limiting belief that's attached to it. And if you know where that limiting belief comes from, that's even freaking cooler, but you don't need to know that to start the process of breaking down that limiting belief and reprogramming your mind with a new belief system. Yeah! It's also really important to understand whatever you resist persists. I'm gonna say that again because it's really important. Whatever you resist persists. So it's very important that you accept these thoughts. Picture it like this. Let's say you have this intrusive thought and in you, it's attached to this feeling of shame or guilt. You're self-aware of the fact that there's repressed shame coming up or it's self-sabotage or whatever. You can either allow this vibration to pass through you, and when you accept it and you don't resist it, you allow this thought to just kind of pass by. You experience the emotions attached to it, but you don't assign meaning to it. You just sort of let it go. when you are resisting this thought, it's almost like it's coming through you and you kind of cling on to a part of it and you're resisting it. You're like, no, 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 no. And it gets stuck. And then it starts to get stuck in your energy body instead of allowing this to be an experience of actually releasing some of that shame. I think that is like a good visualization. That's one that I got in meditation. When we experience these intrusive thoughts, we don't always have control over our reaction to them. Sometimes our reaction is just as impulsive as the thought itself. I know for me, I've had moments where, as I said earlier, the intrusive thoughts I have of my past self and people in my past and situations that occurred, and almost like this feeling of cringe and regret that comes up from those past experiences. When I had these thoughts, I would have this reaction and I literally would say like, I hate myself. And I was like, whoa, where is that coming from, right? Like I didn't even know that that was still in there. So when these really dark reactions happen, it's almost like we have this thought, we kind of get stuck in this vibration of sending ourselves darkness and hate, and almost like we're torturing ourselves because of having this thought. And what it's important to do is kind of see that part of yourself that's creating this internal bullying and sending love to that part of yourself, holding compassion for these feelings of shame and guilt and the part of yourself that's kind of putting that onto you. This is why shadow work and inner child work is really important. When you accept all parts of yourself, these emotions aren't going to have the same amount of power over you because you are already facing it, you're already looking at it, all of that good stuff. When it comes to intrusive thoughts, a lot of the reaction is sending yourself love and validating those emotions that you're feeling, whether it be anger or guilt or shame, and knowing that it's okay to feel those things and it's okay to experience them and to let the vibration move through you and love yourself through that process. And of course, that is obviously easier said than done, but catching yourself in that reaction and not continuing to fall into that rabbit hole, accepting the thought from a place of love. And honestly, if you haven't checked out my video on shadow work, I would highly recommend that. Cognitive behavioral therapy is said to be the best form of therapy to help people that suffer from intrusive thoughts. So if you do not have a therapist, or if you think that having some professional guidance would really help you with this, then I would suggest seeking out somebody who is a professional in that. Yeah, so that is it for this video. Thank you for watching. Like if you liked this video. Obviously, it really helps me out. So like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys later. Peace.